Hey everybody, this is Sally Griffin, aka Millionaire Yogi, and it's a beautiful sunny day and looking over this amazing view. Let me show you. And I am going to meet a very interesting friend here. My topic of interest, as some of you may know, is I help visionaries become world-changing influencers. And sometimes somebody just comes on your path, you meet them. We met in yoga, and I think you're going to find my friend Shay very, very interesting. So I'll sit here. I'm from Rose Hill. Where are you? I've got to just turn. Oop! There you are. And so, let you do all the conversation about who you are and what you're up to. So you might want to say your name and what company you work in.
Hi everybody, my name is Shay David, Dr. Shay David. I'm the co-founder of Kaltura, and I'm the president and GM of Kaltura Media and Telecom. Kaltura is a leader in video streaming technology. So our business is to license software for anybody that wants to join the video revolution. People that either want to use video for internal communication, for reaching out to customers on the enterprise or education side, or people that want to use video for entertainment and do what Netflix is doing or what YouTube is doing. So we're very proud to be serving about 1,000 customers worldwide. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we learned doing that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that would be really interesting is to talk about how you guys all got together, because you're friends. So I'm going to try and sit right beside you. So there we go. Get both of us in.
So we had an idea a few years ago. I got together with my good friend Michal. She and I were doing our postdoc at Yale University. Both of us came from software businesses. I was a partner with another guy who later became our CEO, Ron. He and I were in the GPS navigation business, building software system for map compression and things like that. Ended up merging that company into a public company and taking a little break. Ron went to Wharton. I went to get my PhD and then my postdoc. And there I met Michal, and she and I were writing about innovation and academic articles, but kind of waiting to get back in the game. And Ron, Michal, and I decided that it's a good time to go do another business. This was in 2006. Our academic tenure was coming to an end. We needed to decide whether we wanted to stay in academia or whether we wanted to go back to business. And we also felt the three of us could probably do it, but probably needed a little bit more on the technical side. And we partnered with another colleague, Iran. So the four of us got together as a group of people that wanted to change the world a little bit in the area of media technology. And we had the idea for Kaltura as a video streaming company, even though initially the original idea we had was more focused around collaboration. We thought that just like we've seen systems like open source software and Wikipedia change the way things are done in the IT industry or in the blogging industry or in the journalism industry or in the ad industry. If you think about Craigslist, a lot of large groups of people coming together to build large-scale information systems. We thought that media was the next thing where this was going to happen, and we started Kaltura in order to do that.
Okay, and what would you say? So we keep going back to this feeling of looking at influence. And you're saying that you felt like media was the next thing. That taps into an idea that I've been talking about a lot, that ideas are of their time.
Right.
They drop down, and many people might have the idea at the same time, but it's those who action it that actually something, happens for.
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
I think that time for change in the media industry was definitely in the air. When we started the company, this was before YouTube got sold to Google, but YouTube had already started. This was before the iPhone had a video camera, but the iPhones just came out with stills camera. And we looked at a world where 1 billion people were going to walk with kind of the means of production in their pocket, right? Where video camera wasn't going to cost 500 pounds or anything like that, but it would be built into your phone. And we looked at a world like that and we said it doesn't make sense that so many people are able to create content, and mass consumption of content is the only way to consume it, right? We looked at Wikipedia as inspiration and the capability of involving more people in the production and collaboration process. That was kind of the impetus. for starting the company. We put out the first system out in the world, and people loved it. We sold probably about 10 systems like that. We probably had about $1 million of sales on the books just as we got started, starting to build the product. And we called some friends that we knew, and we sold a system to Major League Baseball, and we sold a system to Universal Studios, and we had some connections, and we knew some people, so people all loved the idea. But they all came back to us with this notion that collaboration is great and media production workflows are great, but they were really stuck on the basics, right? Security, entitlement, access control, formats. How many times have you gotten a video from somebody and they shot it on an Android and you wanted to watch it on an iPhone or your PC and it doesn't even play, right? People really got stuck on the basics. And we understood that if we want to enable more people to participate in production and to really simplify media workflows, we have to solve the basics first. And it became apparent that that was going to require lots of money and lots of time, because the fundamentals of getting media right was a little problematic. The web at this point had kind of a 10-year history or 15-year history, and anything that had to do with publishing, security, measurement, analytics, those were all systems that took a decade to develop. And when we came to video, none of those systems were in place. So how do you secure a video stream? How do you make sure that only the right people can access it? How do you measure it for monetization purposes and whatnot? A lot of building blocks needed to be built, and a lot of those systems were being built in consumer space, like in YouTube or later in Facebook, but very few systems existed in the enterprise space for businesses that wanted to harness all of these tools. And this became the mission of the company, to go in and build those systems and to build the first ever open source video streaming system, to license that as an open source technology to people, and that became a pretty big business. So today the company is about $100 million in revenue, 450 people, and kind of a leader in its space. 25.
When you say open source, can I just ask you what that means?
Sure. So open source is a set of principles and techniques and development methodologies that guarantee that when you develop software, you can distribute not only the binaries, not only the compiled code, but also the sources. And that guarantees that people have access to the source code. The big question for open source companies is, how do you make money in open source? If you give out the software for free, how do you actually make money? And the answer is that normally, for most people, they would still want to license an enterprise version of the software from you. Even though they can go at the end of the day, you can host your code. In our case, we host it on GitHub. You can actually look at the code. I think the best analogy is like a restaurant that cooks in an open kitchen and would also sell you the cookbook.
Right.
Theoretically, you can go look at them all evening, buy the cookbook, and never come back. Realistically, those restaurants probably get more clients than anybody else.
Yeah. And so the idea of openness is an amazing selling point, because right now what we've got is the world of secrets, trying to shut it down, lock it down. And in your world, what would you actually say that you are? Are you a software developer?
By training, I'm a software developer.
Yeah.
I'm a philosopher. I did a double major, computer science and philosophy. Mostly came to the philosophy courses. I learned programming when I was a kid, so didn't really go to school for that. But I think I call myself an entrepreneur, right? I build stuff, and I've built stuff in software, and I think that there's this big framework now. You know, Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz, I think, put it nicely in a few years ago when he said software is eating the world, right? And for good or bad, right? That's not necessarily a good thing, but it's an observation where a lot of things that were not related to software are becoming related to software. A good example is think about agriculture, right?
Yeah.
It used to be, had nothing to do with technology. It was people working in the field. Today, if you looked at the modern day combine or tractor, it's a sophisticated gadget as ever. Some of them are self-driving. It's all data-driven, GPS, satellites, and whatnot. So software is changing agriculture. Again, the same is happening in education, in medicine, in security, and anything else. So I'm a creator, I'm a builder, I'm an entrepreneur, and I build stuff using software. And when we go back to this point, I think of openness, it's very important, because I think the openness is what guarantees the long-term participation of the people that are licensing your software, and it gives them the confidence that they could always trust you. And a good example, when I discuss this with clients or with people that want to work with us, ask them the following two questions. When was the last time you changed oil in your car? And the answer for most people is never. Like, you know, maybe they did it as kids. I used to do it when I was 16 years old in my first three-cylinder car. But probably didn't change oil in my car for the last 25 or 30 years, right? At the same time, would you ever buy a car that did not have a way to open the hood? If the hood was welded shut, would you buy that car? And the answer is probably not, right? You wouldn't have the confidence to buy that car, even though you have absolutely no intention of changing the oil. Why? Because the fact that you can open the hood gives you the guarantee that there would always be service for that car. And I think the same is true. I use that as a metaphor for software development, because I think that
great metaphor.
The fact that you can get access to the code, you can look at what's going on inside, you can have somebody else service it if the company that built it doesn't want to service it anymore. It keeps everybody honest. So we kind of adhere to that principle.
Okay. So, and we were talking earlier about influence, and it sounds to me that you look at systems, your speciality or unique brain is that you can improve systems. So you're somebody who came along when there was no open source video streaming.
Right.
You're like, therefore, an inventor, creator. You've got that energetic kind of tool that you've got going. You're always looking for a better system. Do you think you improved a system, or do you think you moved up to the next realm of a system?
I think we improved it, and I think we created the market and we created standards in the market. One of the first things that we did within the market is we understood that this was bigger than one company's task. So we started what we call the Open Video Initiative. And we organized a big international conference, and we invited all the people from the industry to participate. And by complete coincidence, I didn't even know we were going to talk about this today, but I was wearing the T-shirt from that conference from a few years ago. It's kind of worn out because this was a long time ago. But when we said, hey, what would the world look like if it had open video, right? Open video standards, and it goes across the different layers of what in technology we call the stack. The stack is the layers of technology that has to do all the way from the encoding technology, the security features, the rights management, the players, the systems of entitlement and access control and whatnot. In each and every one of those layers, there's openness to be had, right? And luckily, this was not just our job, but other big companies in the world participated in that. So for example, on encoding, Google had bought some technology and open source that as well. So I'd like to think that we made a big influence, and I think that it makes the world better. And I think that the immediate validation of that idea is that there's less of a problem of cross-device functionality now, right? You don't get those videos that don't open so much anymore, even though some of these companies like Google and Microsoft and with Android and iPhone and Intel and Qualcomm and all those companies are fighting, sometimes in the courts even, fighting with each other like crazy, but still in video somehow everybody was able to agree on some standards, so you can today produce and consume video on any device you want. And I think that's a testament of what open video means. Yeah,
it's amazing. So you can see how bright this guy is. Really, really bright. And that's why I was so blown away by speaking to you. Just, it's the philosopher in you as well. And you know, when you think about information technology, you want it in the hands of the good guys. And openness is part of that. You know, when I actually first, I'm going to use a yoga analogy. When I first came to London years ago, there weren't many yoga centers.
Right.
And so I practiced Ashtanga at Ashtanga Yoga London, which was very old school, based on Patabi Joyce in Mysore. Mm-hmm. And the idea was you would go in and you would do the same practice, learn Ashtanga, nothing else was offered every day. You couldn't like mix and match other styles of classes like yin yoga, it didn't even exist then. And then other schools opened, you know, at a certain point there was an opening. And I remember saying to one of the heads of Ashtanga Yoga London, why can we never find out any information here? It's like there's this closed shop attitude, you know, and I know him, so I had a conversation about that, and they were just not into promoting anything. In a way, they were into keeping the essence of it pure. Yep. But the other side of it was, as a student, I couldn't find out any information, you know, it was just not helpful. Yep. And then suddenly other things opened. And their policy, I had a quote said to me once, which was, we can't share information because, you know, we'll sort of lose out with it. We can't share information. We can't tell you what would be a better one for your body. We're not going to do that because we want to hold the information just for our students. And so basically there was this shutdown on information in London. I'm sure it was everywhere like that.
Yep.
And and now we have a much more open attitude to it. In other words, it's not a scarcity attitude. Everybody, if you're good at what you do, there's room for what you do and you'll do well. It's like super niching.
Yeah.
You will be able to stand in competition with other people and you'll still have a stream of people coming to you, right?
Absolutely. And I think the challenge when we talk about openness is to find the right balance between openness and closeness, right? Between structure and flexibility. If we want to stay within the yoga metaphors, in yoga we talk about the stira and sukha, the openness and the closeness. And again, to use another analogy, think about putting winds in your sails, right? If you don't have the mast as a rigid structure, then you could never harness the wind within your sail. But if you had the sail as being too rigid or inflexible, again, you would never get wind in your sails if you're trying to sail.
Great analogy.
So I think that the trick is to find enough structure and enough rigidity and enough capability to hold things together, and yet let everything else be open and transparent and flexible. And I think that's the trick for any business, right?
Yeah.
Understanding what is your core, what are the principles of the business, whether it's pricing or whether it's a differentiated selling proposition or whatnot. Those are the core, and those are the things that you should hold pretty tight. And all the rest of it, you should probably live with very flexible.
Yeah, great input. So if you were to talk about what somebody who's looking to increase their, say, influence, or they want to work with that kind of theme into their business, what would be something that you would talk about coming up? Because you're always looking ahead.
So I would encourage people to always think about, in business speak we talk about KPIs, key performance indicators, but it doesn't have to be so business school speak. But we have to talk about the metrics that you care about, right? Is that about how many people use your product or service? Is it about how many people heard about it? Is it about the spread of ideas? Is that about money potentially? It doesn't really matter how you measure it. You have to be very focused on that, right? And if you want to measure your influence, and again, let's just, for the sake of example, say that you want to touch as many people's lives, right? That becomes the yardstick by which you can now measure your business. Are you going to go and expand into another country? Are you going to have a different variant of your product? Are you going to hire people? Are you going to fire people? Are you going to have a physical location or do it online? I'm just giving those very kind of mundane day-to-day decisions that you have to take. I would recommend that you always take those decisions in line with that performance indicator that you chose. If your objective is to touch as many people's lives as you can, then yes, probably expanding to another country or hiring more people is probably a good idea. If on the other hand you're mostly focused on financial sustainability and you want to make sure that the first thing that's important to you right now is turning a profit for the first time in your business, then no, probably you shouldn't expand to another country and whatnot. So it's really about understanding what is it that you're measuring. And it's perfectly okay to change those measures over time, because as a business or a service or a movement matures, it's totally fine to be able to redefine your objectives and to redefine your KPIs. And just like people, we keep growing, and what our objectives are in school is not the same as our objectives on the day we finish school, right? And the same is true if we're developing a good or a service or product. Then the development phase is very different, say, than the sales phase is very, very different than the growth phase. So it's very important to understand what is it that you're trying to achieve this year, this month, this week, today, and be very focused on that, and use that as a yardstick by which you can take all the decisions around your service or your business.
Yeah, I have a coach who says stay in the oh, now I've forgotten this. No, hilarious. Stay in, it's not the place that you're focusing on. That's a very long-winded version of it, but it's like stay in the step you're in. That's it. Stay in the step you're in.
Exactly.
And so
otherwise you cross your legs and you fall.
yeah, you do, and people freak out. when they're starting out, they want so many different things at the same time. They want to increase their prices, they want to level up, but actually just that simple, slow maturity of you growing things at a natural pace with always having the goal ahead very clearly in your quarter. What are you working on and what's the year about?
Yeah, exactly.
And keeping that, I stick it up on my wall.
Absolutely.
You
And
know,
I think,
what am I doing?
A famous quote that comes to my mind in regards to that is, I think people, I don't know if it's true or not, but attributed to Martin Luther King, who, when asked about how he had the stamina and the capability and the vision to advocate for the social rights movements, he said it's like stepping into a dark hallway staircase up in the dark. You have to believe that the next step is there, right? And you put your leg up, and even if the light is out, you know that the steps are there, and you just have to take the steps, right? And I think that that's what gave him the power. So I think it's a good analogy for what we're talking about here.
Oh, it's a great analogy. And one final thing I'd like to ask you. I always end up, it's not the final thing. I want to ask you about automation. Sorry, leaning on you. I want to ask you about automation because you have a view that the world is getting automated very quickly, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And here we are sitting on a sort of grassy Primrose Hill, which
and hoping that the robots are not coming.
Yeah, hoping that the robots aren't coming. Well, hoping that when they do come, I've already seen some of them, that there's a way that we could interact that would be very human. It would have a humanness to it. But yeah, tell me, we've talked about this before, what you think about the world of automation.
I think it's going to happen, and I think it is happening, and it's definitely happening in our lifetime. And I think that the challenge that people face is how to interface with the machines, right? To a large extent, the robots are already here. Mundane example, even for people that say, oh, I'm not into technology and whatnot, most of those people still have all of their photos backed up on their phone, and they don't remember any phone number anymore because it's all in their phone. And they have 17 different gadgets at home, sometimes even like an Alexa robot and whatnot. All of those are robots, right?
Yeah.
When we use the word robot, capital R, we mean both software and hardware systems, not just big Terminator-style machines.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the robots are here. And I think that the most important thing that we have to mind is how are we going to allow all the people to participate in that economy? Because some people are at risk of being displaced, right? And if the Googles of the world are developing, say, automated assistants that would allow you to do things like automated bookings over the phone, that sounds like a benign technology, but in reality, it's going to take a lot of people out of their job. We talked earlier about automation in agriculture. Definitely, it's happening in healthcare, and it might happen in pretty much every other area. So we have to really think about how do we upskill the people, and how do we make sure that enough people have enough opportunities for participation and don't become unemployable. And I'm using the term unemployable, not unemployed, because the people that get rejected out of that economy due to automation, they're not just going to be unemployed. If you're a 57-year-old truck driver and you've been displaced by a self-driving car, you go to the unemployment office, nobody's going to hire drivers at that point in time, right? So if your only profession is a driver, you might be unemployable. And that is a big difference. Not that you're temporarily unemployed. You could never get a job again as a driver if all the cars are not going to self-drive. The question becomes, what else could you do? Oh, maybe you were a video gamer when you were in high school. Maybe you can be a drone operator. Maybe you can help monitor algorithms or drones, or be a safety officer for all the self-driving cars and drones that are out there, just as an example, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of jobs are going to be created, and maybe this time it's different. Some people say it's different, but in all past industrial revolutions, the end result was that there became more jobs and more upskilling of people, and I hope that this is the time now. So that's kind of what I would urge people to think about. Not whether the robots are coming and should we push against it, but how are we going to react to it, and how do we make sure that we have the maximum amount of chance to let the maximum amount of people enjoy the benefits of automation. And Sally, you mentioned earlier that some people have the mindset of scarcity, and I think that one of the things that automation allows us to do is to really shift into a mindset of abundance, right?
Yeah.
What if the machines do all the hard work, right?
Exactly.
We can see it in agriculture, the amount of produce that can be produced from a piece of land, for example, doubled and doubled and doubled again, probably 3 or 4 times in the 20th century, mostly using technology and automation. Again, some to ill effect, and fertilizers and Silent Spring and whatnot, it's not all good. What I'm saying is that we can see very clearly the effects of that. We can produce 10 times the amount of food.
Yeah.
per acreage than we could before. And I'm using that as an analogy to any other area of life, right? Automation, if kept in check and if it allows enough opportunity for participation for enough people, would actually be a good thing, right? And I think that's the challenge that we have now. So I'm thinking about that maybe as the next big thing.
Yes, well, I mean, in the coaching world, which I sit firmly in, my coach, Shanda Sumter, I always shout out about her because she's a genius and she's a lovely person. And she basically says, you know, if you deny that this is going on and you're in the sort of old reactive fight mode, like, oh, I don't want to take on new technology, what you don't realize is actually it gives you the biggest opportunity to really do the thing you love.
Right.
And so coaches, now, you guys out there, have the opportunity to get some really profound work done with your clients. Like, many of them will be streaming out of corporate because corporate is, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs in automation. And then you can help them think about what they really want to do. And if you're a good business coach, you can build them up into something that is their passion and purpose. And I only work with people with a calling. So, you know, a lot of my clients are people who have worked in corporate. They have no time with their family, their loved ones, themselves. They've got health issues. They don't get to do their yoga and all of that kind of thing. But actually, when we start building up a business around their calling, and sometimes they do it on the side until they cross over. Some of them have been made redundant, right, already. And so they then use the money to initiate the new business.
Yep.
And that's when they're really happy, because everything I do is around happiness.
Absolutely.
So it's a totally positive step if you can embrace it. And, you know, you look back, every single revolution we've had, there have always been people who are, oh, you know, it's not a good thing that, you know, industrial revolution, it's not a good thing when phones came out. But actually, if you work with it and you just allow the evolution to take place and then work into the system and find your place, you know, it can be miraculous for people. They can find like a whole new life.
Absolutely.
Which leads me to, what would be your 3 top tips? Because you've changed businesses several times, haven't you? And you're in the moment of having another reflective.
Right.
What would you say your top tips would be for entrepreneurs who want to bring in a sense of like the real values to them, to life, happiness, time with loved ones and all of that? You've got kids, you've got a beautiful partner. So what would you say is is this the 3rd big business you're about to launch?
Yeah, this is going to be the 4th.
Oh, the 4th. So watch this space. And what would you say for somebody who's having transition and that kind of thing? What would be the values that you would, highlight?
So I think the first I would copy from you, right? Which is the first thing you have to look at is find something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call it your calling or your passion or your vision of the world. But I think that every great business starts with this notion of a vision of the world that is different than what it is now. Right? Entrepreneurs wake up in the morning and they have this uneasiness in their heart because the world is performing in some way and they have a vision that it needs to be some other way.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to have plastic bags in the world, or I want to have environmental sustainability, or it could be human rights, or it could be women's rights, or it doesn't even matter what the passion is, but it starts from a strong sense of uneasiness about the current state of things and some strong vision about a future state of things. So if you can't articulate that, you probably shouldn't start a business. Right? You have to have some sort of calling or some sort of passion or some sort of vision. So I would say that's kind of number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, I would say, is focus on value creation. Right? What are you going to create? We live in a world which is a world dominated by consumption. Right, and for most people, capitalism, which became kind of pretty much the only form now, is mostly focused on consuming. Right, you go out with friends. What does it mean to go out? To go out means to go out and consume something.
Yeah.
Right? How often do you go out to produce something? Yeah. So focus on value creation. What is it that your social movement or your business or your product or your service is going to create? How are you going to add value? And who are you going to add that value to? I would say. So that would be my second. And third is focus on the people you're going to do it with, right? Because really big ideas require time and money and effort and mostly collaboration with other people. There are very few things worth pursuing that you could just do on your own, right? I'm going to wake up and have this vision of the world, and I have good ideas about how to create value. But if I stay in my basement, maybe authors are the only profession exempt from that ridicule. But yes, if you're an author, you can sit in your basement and change the world by writing. But for most other professions, you actually have to engage with a lot of other people, right?
Yeah.
You have to build stuff, you have to be out there in the world, you have to meet partners and clients and adversaries and anybody else. So you really, my third would be, think about who are the people that are going to be on that path with you. And those could be partners, and those could be employees, and those could be competitors. But you have to understand that if you are onto a big idea, you're going to spend the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years pursuing that idea. You better be in an area where you like the other people, because otherwise you're going to get stuck.
It's great advice. So I'm going to love you and leave you on this sunny day. And thank you so much. That was just brilliant insight. And for everybody, you know, if you want to follow up with this, as ever, I always say, come on to my private Facebook page, which is called When Business is Pleasure. Both of us, I think, live a very pleasurable business life, don't we?
Absolutely.
This is it. Yeah, there's no distinction for me between business or pleasure. I was speaking to my mum, final note. She's, oh no, she won't want me to say her age. Anyway, she looks 20 years younger than her age, and she's finally, way beyond the normal age, is considering some form of retirement.
Wow.
And she just said to me, well, what do you do? Like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm never going to retire.
Exactly.
There is no concept for me of retirement, because I love what I do so much. You know, there's no distinction. And I said, my advice is like, go out, have a look at a tree, read a book, eat, walk along the street, like enjoy yourself, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's it. So see you guys later. And again, thank you so much.
Fantastic.
It was a brilliant
Thank you for
conversation.
suggesting. Thank you.
Thank you.